Are you looking to retire? Today's video is going to talk about some reasons why you should consider moving to the state of Tennessee. Hello, my name is John Vandergriff. I am one of the owners and the wealth planning team lead at Blue Ridge Wealth Planners. And as we've had more conversations with people around the country about retirement, I have had to answer the question a lot of times of why Tennessee is a good place to consider moving to. And so to make that a little simpler, I'm going to talk about it in this video so that we can not only pump how good Tennessee is, and I'm biased because I am a lifelong Tennessean, but also talk about why financially it could make sense for you if you're living somewhere else and have accumulated money and you're wanting to maybe make that money go further, or really get some benefits and see what else is out there. So as we look at this, again, I am biased. I like Tennessee. I'm going to give you some filler in here just based on my own experience as we look at this. But the first thing that we want to point out is Tennessee is not the only state, but one of the states that has no income taxes. And so you say, well, why does that matter? Well, as we look at it, a lot of the videos that we do, we only talk about federal tax rates because that is the only thing that applies to your income in the state of Tennessee, which is a great thing. It makes it very simple when it comes to taking money out of your retirement accounts, like your IRAs, 401ks, anything that you've been putting money away tax deferred. You are only going to have to reckon with the federal income tax implications of that in Tennessee, not additional things in comparison. So as we look at that, if we compare that to the highest income tax state of California, depending on where your income goes, and you have a progressive system, some states will have a flat income tax, some states will have progressive depending on how much income you show, but theirs will range anywhere from 1% additional all the way up to 13.3%, which is significant if you are making really good income in California. You're just seeing less and less of it that stays with you versus if you lived in another state. So let me give you a practical example of this just to show what this looks like. So, and specifically the impact that that's going to have on your retirement account. So let's say your income right now is $150,000 taxable, and you needed to pull $50,000 out of your 401k or IRA for whatever reason, to spend it, to convert it. Doesn't really matter. The tax implications are going to be the same. So in Tennessee, very simply, you would fall into, after standard deductions come out of this money, your top tax bracket being 22%. So that $50,000 would be taxed at 22%, and your net amount, if you just pulled the taxes out of that, would be $39,000. So again, that's just the way that the federal tax rates work. If we compare that to New York City, so we're not picking on California too much, what New York City has that's pretty interesting is they have not only federal tax rates, but also state and city taxes that will apply to your income depending on what level you're at. So if you're at $150,000 of income, you pull $50,000 out, you have the same 22% federal tax rate, but you also at that income level would have an additional 6% state income tax, and then you would have a 3.876% New York City tax that would be assessed on this $50,000. So really, it would cause you to net out $34,062, which doesn't sound like a big difference, less than $5,000, but by a percentage, you've got 12.66% less money in this scenario than you do in this one. And so as you take more money out in retirement, as you increase your cost of living over time, the question becomes, what are the diminishing impacts of taxes to the withdrawals that you have, especially if we're talking about Roth conversions and really trying to lock in the lowest tax rate here. You may say, well, I'm always going to live in New York City or someplace that has that. And I would argue, depending on what's happening, the chance of tax increase happening there is probably the same, impact from federal, maybe worse if they have state income tax, that could go up. But again, if you're considering the decision of, well, I'm in a higher income tax state now and I'm wanting to move somewhere that has a lower, maybe that's a reason not to do conversions now. If maybe next year you're going to jump from this situation to this, the math makes sense to wait for that conversion if you're considering moving to a lower income tax state versus the one that you accumulated your wealth in. Hopefully that makes sense. This is some of the things that we look at on a practical level, but just giving you this one example so that you can see the difference, bottom line, to the money that you have without taking into consideration any investment decisions or anything like that. So income taxes do matter. If you are in a low or no income tax state, you will get more from your retirement savings than you will if you're in a position where you have federal plus, depending on the tax environment of where you live at. So next area, number 2, so we talked about no income taxes in Tennessee. The next is it is a less expensive real estate state compared to not only the national average, but other states that we look at. So again, in Tennessee, and this is coming from Zillow, so there's not information I made up, average home value in Tennessee is $324,797. If we compare that to the national average, same time frame here, as of beginning of July when this video is recorded, $360,681. So again, pretty noticeable difference there, you know, a little more than 10%, or not quite 10% there. Actually, almost right on the money, 10%. Less cost in Tennessee for a home. So not only if you're in a higher, you know, if we compare this to California, you're more than double that. Average home value in California is $786. So if you're wanting to go and say, okay, I've got an average home in California, I've got an average home in Tennessee, you could essentially replace the home that you have here, and if you have no debt on this money, maybe pocket a pretty good chunk, especially after you pay capital gains on the liquidation of that home. So as we look at it, if you have been building money in a high cost of living, high real estate value state, and you're wanting to really maximize the money that you have there or the home equity, maybe moving to a state that has a less expensive real estate environment could be advantageous to you. And again, I'm just giving you the details on Tennessee because that's where I am, but it's amazing to me when I have conversations with people of, you know, finding out the dynamics of their home in the environment that they're in versus what if they did that exact same home here. Usually it's hundreds of thousands of dollars difference if they're in a state like California versus what they could get for that same value, or maybe even get a bigger home and still be able to pocket more money. So anyway, just some interesting things to look at. 3, cost of living is a little lower here. Seniorly did a study that we can link to in below the video here that talked about the best states to retire on a budget to in the year 2024. Tennessee, with all the factors that they measured, was the 3rd best state to retire on a budget to. So again, we didn't take the top spot. I think Iowa was the top there, but again, with what I know about Tennessee, when you can combine the budget aspects of that with the tax friendliness, but then also some of the things that you get from a geographic perspective, I think it's a pretty good bang for your buck package there that you have at your disposal when it looks at Tennessee versus other states. The interesting thing is we look at, and this is from a East Tennessean, so we're in the blue section here. I want to explain a little bit of the dynamics of the state because Tennessee is rather unique. One of the things that's interesting, and I've heard this from somebody, that, you know, Tennessee doesn't look like a big state, but it's a very long state. And it has often been said that if you're in the Tri-Cities up here at Bristol, the distance from Bristol to Memphis is actually more than the distance between Bristol and Canada. So a little fun fact there for you. But Tennessee is basically broken up into 3 different regions. So as we look at this, we've got West Tennessee, not Western. So if you're wanting to move here, if you call it Western Tennessee, people will know you're not from here. So you've got West Tennessee, which is basically Memphis and a lot of farmland. Okay, so this is a geographic plane as we look at it. Then you've got Middle Tennessee, which has a lot of different counties, but overwhelmingly the largest city in the state by far is Nashville, and has continued to grow. If you know anybody who's ever gone on a bachelorette party, pretty good chance they went to Nashville if they're anywhere close to it. And so then the last region is the one I'm partial to, East Tennessee, which, you know, as we look at this, the Middle Tennessee is a plateau. So you have a plain up into a plateau. Then when you come off of that, you've got a valley here of East Tennessee, and then starts to get into the mountains that we share with North Carolina, the Great Smokies or Blue Ridge Mountain Ranges, whichever name you prefer there. So again, you get a lot of variety when it comes to the geographic features of Tennessee, especially the more east you go, because not only are you going to get some flat areas, some lakes, rivers, but also some mountains here that make it interesting for hiking and, again, we are located in Knoxville. We also have an office in Chattanooga. So I'm pretty partial to East Tennessee personally. And I've grown up here. I know a lot of things about the area. Everywhere I've gone, I've always wanted to come back home here just because of the benefits of not only geographic regions, but also having different seasons. 4 seasons here that aren't as harsh as other places that you'll find in the country. So again, as you look at this, interesting state. I would encourage you to investigate these areas. If you're wanting to have more rural approach, there's technically rural areas all over the state, but you have more congregation into Memphis, Nashville. Knoxville's not quite as big, but Knoxville and Chattanooga are the next biggest cities, and then Bristol is kind of a part of a cluster known as the Tri-Cities, which is Bristol, Johnson City, and Kingsport. So as we look at this, again, it's just important to know the lay of the land. Most people that we look at are retiring to Nashville when they're coming from other places. If they want to have more of a metropolitan area, if they're wanting to get away from that, they may pick East Tennessee or really any of the other rural areas of Tennessee to retire to. And then we don't want to just talk about good things. What are some drawbacks that we need to consider when it comes to moving to Tennessee? One of the things that I've seen across a lot of different resources is the lack of consistent health care, and it has to do with the way that Tennessee is spread out. So you obviously have rural areas and more metropolitan areas. Your health care access is going to be a lot better in those metropolitan areas or near them. If you're in the middle of rural Tennessee, you may be an hour away from a hospital, which could be a bad thing if you're looking to retire. So you want to make sure that you are somewhat close, 30 minutes or less away from a good hospital, which most retirement communities are positioned to consider that, but it is a thing that you've got to look at when it comes to Tennessee as a whole. There is no major public transportation outside of just buses inside of the major cities. I think that's one of the things that's really going to hurt Nashville if it continues to grow, and something they've got to address, because they are doing some work to their airports, but not really addressing a lot of the infrastructure as far as major transit downtown, trying to put in some kind of either elevated train system, or probably can't do a subway system just the way that Nashville is built. So not really anything other than just buses that go across the state of Tennessee. And because of how spread out different things are, you may get to a metropolitan area, but may have to hunt, especially here in Knoxville, for some Uber access if you're going really anywhere other than the airport or downtown. And then, just from a geographic feature, we are a landlocked state. We are surrounded by a lot of different states. Personally, it can take, us 6 hours to get to a beach. If that's something that affects you, you may want to find some things that are closer to water access. And depending on what city you're in, it could be difficult to travel other places. Like Knoxville, where we're from, most of the time you're either going to have to travel to Atlanta, Chicago, or Dallas to get to really anywhere else in the world, just because Knoxville's airport is not a major hub. Nashville is becoming larger, has a lot of access with Southwest. Memphis can be hit or miss because FedEx is located there, so they try to have a little bit more transportation there, but it can be difficult to get out of Tennessee if you're doing anything other than driving. Now driving, you've got 2 major interstates that come through Knoxville, so it does give you some access there. But as we look at this, again, there may be other drawbacks as you look at it, but those are the things that kind of stick out to me. If you do have comments or questions, feel free to leave those on this video. But as we look at it, in terms of trying to make the best decisions that we can about what you want to do in retirement, and this is where we, kind of come into the picture, making the objectives and concerns for your money as far as how can your money go further, how can you enjoy a better cost of living, those are some things that you need to consider, not just the impact of what you withdraw, but where you live and how that affects the decisions that you're going to make. So like if you live somewhere that you've always lived, but you're going to be traveling more often, that's going to be an increased cost compared to if you live somewhere that you would most likely often travel to, and then you just go back home and visit every now and then. It may work out better to do that. You may want to move away from the city because you've been there a long time. One of the things that's interesting is we've had some people that have lived in a high cost of living state, been able to accumulate great pensions, and then they move to a lower cost of living state, and that pension provides not only what they need, but also additional travel expense. It really becomes hard for them to spend the kind of money that they were spending somewhere else in Tennessee just because of the lower cost of living. So, as we look at this, as retirement planners, it's not just about understanding the objectives and concerns that you have, but also how can you benefit in an income, investment, taxes, healthcare, and family legacy, maybe from where you moved to that may be different from where you are now. So again, I've had lots of conversations with people all around the country. If we are in a high cost of living or high income tax state, I usually kind of end up pitching people on why you should consider moving to Tennessee or other lower income, lower cost states like us. It's just, as I said, I'm partial to Tennessee because that's where we're geographically located. And we like having good people. So if you're a mean person, we'd say maybe stay where you're at. But if you're a nice person and you want to keep Tennessee a lot like it has been, you're welcome to come here and see if it's a good fit for you. So with that said, thought we would take some time to look at the financial aspects of Tennessee. Like I said, if you do have questions, let us know. If you're wanting to look at the numbers behind your situation to see if financially it is better for you, or you can, maybe get a better benefit for your dollar in Tennessee versus where you're at now, obviously click the link below. We'd love to have a well-rounded, holistic discussion with you about your plans and what you're wanting to do, and if moving to Tennessee or a lower cost income tax state could be more advantageous for the money that you put away. So with that said, thank you for your time. We look forward to sharing more information with you in the future, and let us know what you think of Tennessee.